and thank you. Hello to everyone, and thank you for coming to the Luminor first ever press conference. We have here Nils Melngailis, who is the Luminor Group chairman of the board, and we have Erkki Raasuke, CEO of Luminor Group. And before we get started, we should go through some practicalities. So first of all, the press conference will be in English. Secondly, we will have it in two parts. In first part, Erkki and Nils will talk about the closing of the transaction that happened today, and then about Luminor's strategic choices and insights. Then we have the questions and answers part. We will also have the online streaming, so we will have lots of journalists and audience watching from YouTube, and they have the possibility to have questions, answers presented as well. So to those who are watching from online, please follow the link and send in your questions in English. And after we are finished, you will have the chance to have interviews with Nils and Erkki. So welcome again, and Nils, Erkki, it's yours.
Thank you. So hello and welcome to Luminor, Labdien. Last week and over the weekend, our teams have invested a lot of time and effort in completing the transaction, and I'm very happy to say that today is our first work day of Luminor. We have again, over these last weeks and several months, we've now created one of the largest banking groups in the Baltics, with total assets of approximately 15 billion euros, 1.6 billion of capital, which represents 17% core tier 1 capital adequacy. So we think this is a fantastic start for a business in a banking business in an industry which is going under very substantial changes. In terms of the timeline, just to remind everyone, the transaction itself was announced last August, so a little bit more than a year ago. Both Nordea and DNB, looking at their business in the Baltic countries, understood that given that the investments that need to be made and the challenges of the financial services industry, that this type of transaction makes a lot of sense. I'd have to say that, since Erkki and I have been appointed, and the more we get into the details of the operations, meet the people, and the very strong teams on both sides who've been working very closely together for the last 6 months in terms of planning for the future of Luminor, I think we're more and more excited about what we see than when we first joined even. We've also rebranded the bank. I'll speak about that in a few minutes. We've also, through a very transparent process, selected both teams from each bank, and also we have some very strong managers who've joined us externally to build a very strong team to take the business forward. And most importantly, in terms of the timing of this transaction, last month we received the blessing of the regulators, which of course is one of the key milestones we need to reach in order to consummate the transaction. So since we received this permission, of course, the work is only intensified, and we're very happy to announce that we're open for business today. And I think all of the planning work is behind us. Now it's time to really get to work and kick off Luminor as a new financial services provider with a very strong foundation. We've also, as you all know, we've gone through a rebranding process. This is a process that we started very soon after we joined. We worked with an international consultancy called Future Brands. Also had dialogues both with clients and with staff teams to get really ensure that the brand that we're building is consistent with what we think the future holds for the financial services industry, what the clients would like to see, and also the culture and values of both DNB and Nordea. So it's been a fairly interactive process internally, and I think it's safe to say that the staff are more and more excited about what we can do, and hopefully the clients and you all will feel the same very soon. Finally, from my side, I'd like to remind you a bit about the structure. I know we've announced this before, but of course, the shareholding structure of the holding company, which owns the three fully regulated banks in each country, as of today, is owned 46% by, 56% by Nordea, and 44% by DNB. Basically, and we also have in the transaction we will have management participating in this shareholding structure. It's going to be part of a really long-term incentive program, not just for existing managers, but also an increasing amount of people from both banks. And I think as we announced earlier as well, this is the initial structure. Over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, we will also go to a permanent structure where the holding company will be in Estonia, and Latvia and Lithuania will be converted to branches. This is really a technical legal step. Operationally, there is already a group management team under Erki's leadership. The governance of the holding company is also going to be replicated over time in Estonia. And in terms of customers and staff, there shouldn't be any difference in day-to-day operations. Our current operating model is already being fully implemented by Erki and his team. So I'll hand over to Erki now.
Thank you very much, Niels. And good morning or good day. As Niels was saying, this transaction is quite unprecedented. If we have seen over the last 20 years or so how the Baltic banking market or financial services market has been growing, mostly by entering strong Nordic financial groups and then building their business here. So now we are first time where we're seeing something which this market has not witnessed earlier. Yes, some of the earlier comers also have reduced their footstep and have eventually decided to leave. But here we have a very different transaction whereby two formerly competing fairly large players are combining their businesses. Naturally, also creating the Luminor means that the old way of working and positioning ourselves and then targeting our work needs to be changed. And with a few words, then I want to talk about it, what this change means to us. When we are positioning Luminor in the Baltic financial services market, I want to bring out two, I think, important areas here. Firstly, we recognize, again, as Niels was saying, is that financial services are going through the major transformation. And the formerly used business models are changing or very much forced to be changed. We clearly recognize that as well, and we very much agree is that banking 5 years or 7 or 10 years from now is probably going to be look in a number of ways quite different than what it is. And we at the Luminor, we have decided is that we want to be in the forefront of this change. So we're not going to hold back or hold on from our previous way of the working, but rather we recognize the importance of the technology, what it plays in this transformation, and we want to take the courageous steps forward and be not the follower, but be one of them who is actually going to shape that financial industry development in the Baltics. And the second part in our positioning, also very important part, is that we are the only sizable player who is going to be explicitly in the Baltics or for the Baltics. The other bigger players are part of the larger Nordic financial groups, and then there are a number of very good local players, but who are significantly smaller by their scale, and they do not cover these three markets. It is well known that Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian banking markets are very similar, and overall the customer behavior and customer expectations are also very similar. So therefore, while seeking for the scale and then for the size, yes, the Baltic banking market can be seen as a one market. So we think now is that by creating the Luminor is that we are very well positioned to take benefit of that. And at the same time, we also say is that our focus will be only into the Baltics as we get going and not outside of that. Nils was also mentioning or showing in his slide is that we have 1.3 million customers, good customers. But also Luminor needs to create its own focus. So we are not going to be everything for everybody. Although is that we are going to keep serving all of these good customers who are currently with us, but we want to create our more crisp focus going forward. And based on that positioning, what I was just also describing, we are going to build our own offerings and services, keeping in mind local companies, particularly the companies whose decision-making is inside of the Baltics, and then financially active and entrepreneurial people. Together with the technology and together with brave investments, we hope to create products and services which will be saving the time and attention for these people, for these entrepreneurial people, and then all of us together, we can grow our economy of the three Baltic countries and build a better future. Luminor is going to be a pan-Baltic organization. Yes, our customer-facing organization is going to be very local. We want it to be local. So Luminor in Latvia is going to be very Latvian, in Lithuania very Lithuanian, and the same in Estonia. But we, as an organization itself, is that other than this customer-facing parts of our organization, we do pretty much everything across the Baltics. And that also means is that we are multicultural organization. Our executive team of 15 people is actually consisting 7 different nationalities. Not very common for the Baltics, but we take that diversity very much as a strength. And now the question is that, I mean, as diverse organization as it is that, I mean, how you actually going to work together as a team. And we have came up with values and with behaviors which should be helping to guide us to work together as a one team. And I also want to briefly touch them. So first, we have defined 3 values for Luminor. The first of them is curiosity, which we think is an interest to the external life. Curiosity is always the start of the growth and then development. That is something which is pushing people and the organizations further. We see that is fitting back with our high ambitions in growing our products and offerings and also using modern technology for that. Secondly, collaboration. This is something that both of our legacy organizations are very good at already. So we have measured that, and we see is that our teams are very skillful in terms of working as a teams. Now we need to glue these teams together over the time and even further build this capability. And thirdly, focus. I already mentioned this. Luminor is not going to be everything for everyone. We will engage into the businesses where we think that we can provide and build a real value to our customers and then to the society. And there will be some other areas where we possibly have or where we have been engaged previously, but where we are not really that good, or where there are better players basically to take that space, and then we would step back from that. So looking forwards to the Luminor going forward, I think it's going to be probably more simple, but clearly more focused organization. And let me then wrap up my part here with what is on our table over the coming 3 months, 1 year, and then 3 years. So first of all, of course, the major goal what has been there for the last more than a year, like Nils was also talking about it, is actually go live. And this happened at early morning hours of Sunday, when legally Luminor was created. And then during the next 24-30 hours now, the many steps have been taken, and we took the important decision last night, is that the Luminor is ready to open all of its channels and also branches to the customers and operate as business as usual. And this is very much what we do as we speak. Then we have become now as a one organization, not yet as a one team, and it will be a learning exercise to start to work together. And we absolutely going to have a highest focus now over the coming few months to stability of the customer service. Is that the creation of the Luminor is not going to be remembered or seen as a difficulties with customer service. We do not take too much new things onto our table, because exactly for these reasons, while preparing for the merger, we have had big restrictions of not sharing the information and not basically, for all right reasons, not being able to talk about our customers and common customer strategy, etc. So this is all now starting to happen as we speak. Over the first 1 year, we expect that we're going to be working as a truly one team based on the one set of the values. By that time, behind the Luminor store, there are not going to be any more 2 doors, one to the former DNB and then one to the Nordea platform. There is going to be one unified customer offering. We do foresee that already within this first year, or actually between the 6 and 12 months of the first year, that we will be there in the market also with the brave new offerings in our digital arena. And we will not hesitate also to invest into the future, is because this transformation and then the new business model cannot be built without investing first. And if we look forward then to the 3 years ahead of us, is that by the end of the 3 years, we hope to be the one what I was describing by our positioning is as a bank of the next generation, or truly contemporary financial service provider with fully digital offering. By that time, all of our restructuring is completed, so we don't have anything left to take care of there. We will be, rather than kind of slightly inwardly and only focusing on our current customers, then it will be the time where we will be seeking for the further growth in terms of the new customer acquisitions, but also any other business combination which would make sense. And what we have also put as a long-term target for ourselves is eventually Luminor should be in the shape, and then we have a direction that it should become a stock-listed company in the Baltics. Let me end here. That is the brief intro, and back to Hedvig.
Back to questions and answers, and thank you, Nils and Erkki, for that introduction. We have microphone ready, so when you want to ask questions, please state your name and who you represent. And after the audience questions, we will go to online questions.
Hello, my name is this working?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My name is Ivo Butkevich. I work for news agency Leta. I wanted to ask, could you shed some light on when the rebranding process will be finished in regards to ATMs, in regards to the customer service centers, and also, as far as I understand, Nordea and DNB right now has 2 different types of ATMs. What do you plan to do about that?
Do you want to get started?
I could start, yeah. I think, well, first of all, on the brand, you know, we've it's been an extensive planning process. I think, you know, we've done as much as we could in recent weeks, given that, you know, we really did have to wait for the regulatory approvals to come through before we start pushing ahead with making physical changes, of course, to the bank's infrastructure. My understanding is that a great deal of this work will be done in the next 100 days.
Yes.
I could maybe hand over to Erkki, who's a bit more involved in the operations.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the work will carry on with a high speed. All in all, we have agreement with our parent organizations to selectively still use, not for our business advancement, but still to use for all practical reasons their trademarks up to the 6 months and no longer. So that is basically the backstop, is that everything needs to be completed within the 6 months. But as Nils was saying, is that that very much or many activities are basically kicked off right now. What comes then to the ATMs network is that, I mean, we do have ATM networks in all 3 countries, and their arrangements are slightly different. We are in a different partnership arrangements, and just the creation of the Luminor now actually just now allows us to open up these discussions with other market players and seek the way forward here. So we don't have yet the crisp and ready step-by-step execution plan. But one should expect kind of clear harmonization also in that area.
Thank you, Erkki. Anyone?
Aaron Eglitis, Bloomberg News. Could you tell us how the bank will be funded? Will you get any funding from the shareholders, or do you expect to sell bonds? And also, when you mentioned that the bank will be listed after the 3-year plan, would that be a listing in the Baltics? Would the IPO be on one of the Baltic exchanges, or also outside the Baltic states? Thank you.
Do you want to take listing and I take the funding?
I'll start, yeah. I think, so obviously like any company, any financial institution, we're going to look to optimize our capital structure as much as possible, and through our operational plan and client service, ensure a profitable business which will enable us to go to the markets both for funding and eventually for equity and other financial instruments. We are, I think, from a governance and a management perspective, we're putting all of the building blocks in place to enable us to make the move to go public with equity or to go to the financial markets in other ways as we design our governance. So we are doing this with this in mind. That's why we have to have very substantial governance at the board level. We have to have this all agreed with the ECB, which will be more and more involved in regulating Luminor as a large systemic bank in the Eurozone. Exactly when the timing of that will depend on our success in terms of operations and also market conditions at any given time. I could maybe hand over to Erkki to comment a bit further on the funding.
Yeah, exactly. Luminor is going to have a quite substantial full sale funding. It's the amount is bigger than 4 billion euros. So if we have all in all customer deposits of 9 billion, our full sale funding will be more than 4 billion euros. It is provided half and half by the parent organizations, being it both short and long-term financing. It is provided at attractive terms, and there is not necessarily the end date for that, as the agreements do foresee, is that the funding, when it's starting to mature, can be rolled forward. But as a part of the changes which have happened in financial industry post-financial crisis, also we see is that the previously widely used business model, whereby there is a cross-border large amount full sale funding, is used basically to build the local credit portfolios. That one doesn't really work anymore because it's very capital extensive, and it's just not. It has lost a lot of its economics. So why I'm saying that is that it's one of our internal targets is over the time to replace the full sale funding with the local deposits. Obviously, making all of that big shift is taking time and taking probably a number of the years. But when we talk here 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years from now, is that one should expect this full sale funding to be shrinking all of the time.
Thank you, Erkki. Any more questions?
What will be price level for customers? More like Nordea Bank or more like in DNB?
Thank you. That's
Luminor.
That's a very good question. what we see, and not so much that it was a plan, but I think this has been a kind of maybe logical development, is that we see is that the Luminor is mostly built onto the former strengths of the corporate banking of Nordea, and we see is that in the Luminor is there are basically on a household banking or private individuals banking is that's kind of much more led by former DNB people. So maybe that is it's not very precise answer to a question, but it's I mean, we have tried to combine obviously the strength from the both organizations, but we see is that yes, is that I think our corporate face is going to probably have a strong feel and touch from the Nordea, and our private individuals business is going to have a strong feel and touch of the DNB.
Thank you. More questions, or we go to online? So we have some questions from online as well, and the question is, are shareholders keen to finance Luminor's capital in the future if needed? Do you have ability to get subordinate loans, other liquidity sources?
I think that the short answer, as far as I know, is yes. We've discussed, the management team has presented an initial strategy to the board. Just one point on the structure again, which I failed to mention earlier. Even though there is a slight difference between Nordea and DNB in terms of economic interest in the holding company, the voting rights are 50-50. So we've been, and our board reflects that, and we review the strategy and the proposals from management, which of course up until now have entailed decisions around branding, about integration decisions, which had to be taken over time. There will be proposals from management to make investments in certain areas. I think certainly one area I can say already that we've pre-agreed is substantial investments in technology. We still have to work out the extent of that, but obviously, as the shareholders are committed to Luminor and its success, and will contribute, and as we spoke earlier, will ensure the funding in the foreseeable future, and as long as we have ideas that make sense and bring a return to the business, I'm sure those will be supported as well.
Yeah, maybe just to add is that maybe there hasn't been a very good availability of the clear data or so, but I mean we are combining two organizations which currently on the running basis, if we just add it together, are making up an annual profit around 100 million euros per annum. So this is that's a big pool of profit to be earned. That is happening basically as we speak. And so therefore also is that we feel is that we do have a strong cash flow to also finance the needed investments going forward.
Thank you. And I think if no more questions, then we can go to interview part.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.